I would like to begin by asking, how do you see Turkey's role in the broader region following this new NAFTA issued some days ago, which further destabilizes the region because we were on a path for some exploratory talks and now they are off the table?
Well, I think that we've learned that Turkey basically uses the NAVTEX and the other crises to kind of blackmail a bunch of countries. So basically what they do is they will lure countries like Greece or even Israel, other countries in to pretend that they want to negotiate. But their whole thing is a kind of cyclical attempt to always keep provoking. And I think until they're confronted with a serious consequence, they will just keep playing this game. And it's always to their benefit because they always get to choose the time and place of the crisis. I think there has to be some sort of pushback because otherwise it's always on Ankara's time zone.
So,
and that means they
what
just
is
get
the
to do
goal of Ankara? What are they seeking for? Are they looking for a more extended dialogue on a bunch of issues that are not on the table right now? Are they potentially looking for a conflict which will dictate new terms for a dialogue?
The evidence shows that Ankara only basically does dialogue with the Russians and sometimes with Iran, which are countries that are both authoritarian regimes and that are kind of natural partners for an authoritarian regime like Ankara. I would say that for any of the democracies, such as Greece or Israel or Cyprus, they just want to threaten. And I think they've made it very clear that they like to use the crisis to whip up nationalist, militarist sentiments at home. And there's basically no consequence. So I would say that I don't think countries should negotiate with them until they've been forced to come to the table as well. It shouldn't be that we're always kind of actors in their circus.
You are describing this Turkish overstretching from spanning from Iraq, Armenia, to all the way to Libya. So how far can this go? How long can it last? And what are the potential consequences for this Turkish behavior? Are there potential consequences for this Turkish behavior?
Well, I mean, I think if you look at the nature of the Turkish government or regime, it looks like a traditional 1920s or 30s trajectory of an extremist regime. I don't think those types of governments usually stop until there is someone that puts a stop to them somewhere and draws a line. I think the evidence shows that they have suffered no setbacks. And I don't entirely believe they are overstretched. Turkey is certainly, it has an economic problem, but it's a very powerful country. And you see that it's acquiring new drones, new air defense. And I think that it likes to test them out. Of course, not against a country like Greece, which is a NATO member, but it does use them, of course, in Syria and other places.
Do you think that the European Union has some kind of leverage against Turkey, potentially with economic sanctions? Will the Erdogan government adhere to such a pressure?
Well, I think we've seen in the past, since 2015, that Turkey is very willing to use the refugee issue, which I think is a violation of international law, to kind of threaten countries with refugees. But they are very willing to do that. And I think you saw that the EU and Germany especially has been pushing to basically pay a bribe, which is a very, very bad position to be in, because that means any day of the week they can decide, well, if you don't give us enough money, we send refugees, which is really not an acceptable behavior. And I think that, as I said, I do think there needs to be some real consequence. And if that means, yes, real sanctions, not just what the Trump sanctions were in 2019, which is like a few weeks. I think that's the only place that probably Ankara will understand, which is strength to strength, which is, by the way, how they deal with Russia.
Since you mentioned the Trump administration, what will be the role of the United States in the region? Will there be a more active role following the election on November 3rd?
I would say that the general trajectory of the United States is to withdraw from the region. And under a Biden presidency, I think that they will be a bit tougher on Turkey. Of course, they will try to resurrect a bit of the transatlantic relationship and multilateralism, although that usually means not using force. That's just talk. The Trump administration is more about using force, but Trump administration is very transactional. So it's more about, if, okay, you buy F-35s, I give you something, you know, like, and you can see, by the way, Secretary Pompeo's trip to Greece and Cyprus, I think, is very symbolic. He starts to understand deeply the need to create a Greece, Cyprus, Egypt, Israel, UAE kind of alliance structure.